Hey everyone, Bryan back again on another episode of the Driveway Marketing Podcast, where you, your team, your clients, you're all pulling your trucks, your Maybachs, your Mercedes, whatever you have into your clients' driveways to help them create better lives. And with me today, I think will be really interesting conversation. He's another Northeasterner who's spending time in Florida, but he shouldn't come because there's no more room. Just saying. But I get it because I'm originally from the Northeast too. But Dan, we have with us Dan Claps. Good morning, Dan.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Dan's got a super interesting background because so far, the people we've had on the podcast have not been in his world. I don't think so. Maybe I could be wrong. They may have come from his world. So, but as a someone who's building and growing businesses, no matter what it is, right? You got to look down this road, and so hopefully that Dan will share. So, Dan is the founder and CEO of the Playbook, My Franchise Playbook, which is also owns a franchise called Voda. Did I do it right? Did I say it right?
That's right.
And then what's really kind of amazing is that they're going to bring other brands to market. So I can't wait to hear about that. Right. So how did you end up? So franchise is something most business owners think about, right? I'm a middle manager at AT&T. And something happens, there's a downsizing. So, there's always that concept of, I'm just going to start a franchise or buy a business and go work for myself, because your podcast is Fire My Boss.
That's right.
I'm not going to let my staff listen to that because they already think I'm half crazy. So anyway, I should have one called Fire My Partner. Oh, that's all right. That's another story for another day. Anyway, so how did you get started kind of down the road, and kind of why, and then we'll start with that. So how'd you get started? And clearly it didn't happen in one step, right? So you must have fired your boss along the way, because we always tell our boss we can do a better job than you. And so kind of share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. You're exactly right. It happened in steps of firing my boss. But I'm Dan. I'm CEO of Voda. Thanks again for having me on the show.
Awesome, you're here. You're awesome. I'm so excited.
Voda's a cleaning and restoration franchise chain. We have over 100 locations around the country. But how I got to here is really a multitude of trial and error and a lot of mistakes. So I started out, Bryan, I'm from New Jersey, grew up in South Brunswick in the central Jersey. And I was, pretty regular kid, played sports, was an average student, went to college, was an average student. But in college, I started a side business or a side hustle in the event staffing space. So I was staffing promotional models, brand ambassadors for different events. Fun job to have, or business to have as a college kid. And it paid my bar tab, if you will. And I was doing that, and I was making pretty decent money at it. But in my early 20s, I wanted to stop doing that. And I tried to sell the business. And I learned that I didn't have a business. I had a job, right? I was the whole business. And so I learned a valuable lesson, which was I had not built an asset. And so my dad said, why don't you look at franchises? And so franchises are all about systems and processes. I can learn how to build a business better through franchising. And quite frankly, I think going back, if I were to go back again, I would have just bought a franchise and not even done college. Like, that's what I would have done if you're an entrepreneur. Maybe if you got young kids that are about.
And it's different today, right? Because college, you go get a liberal arts degree, spend $200,000, and then you get a job trying to make $50 an hour at McDonald's. So I'm not really sure that that's really much of a career path. So
I think it should be socially acceptable and able to get a loan to start a business the way you could get a loan to go to college.
That's an interesting concept. I think that would be, I can see in some cases it could be misguided because they're going to blow it on, they're going to blow it on some things they shouldn't do, but they blow it in college anyway. So what difference does it make?
I remember being in college and kids were living in, pretty great places paid for by their student loans. And I mean, there'd have to be some restrictions, but anyway, I got into franchising or looked at franchises. And, what I was doing, Bryan, is I was looking at home service franchise opportunities, because when I was a teenager, I had sold Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door a bit.
There you
those
go.
big vacuums.
You were a Cutco guy too? I remember college breaks, Cutco people were always showing up in my parents' house. So.
I looked into Cutco, but I was the Kirby guy. And so home services to me is all about building a tighter mousetrap and a better customer service experience. So selling vacuums kind of translated into that. So I was looking at franchises in home services back in like 2014.
Nice. That's cool. And so did you end up buying one, or did you end up did you buy a franchise? Or I know or did you end up starting your own, or what ended up? So what ended up happening?
What happened was at that time, I was in my early 20s. I remember they sent me like a questionnaire to print out and fill out to evaluate me as a franchisee. I didn't even have a printer. I didn't have any credit. I had some money, but not enough to buy a home service business. And so I realized that, and I found a franchise called Murphy Business and Financial, which was like a $35,000 investment, and they taught you how to be a business broker. So I actually ended up going that route, helping people buy and sell businesses in New Jersey. This was back in 2014. Fast forward, I did that for about a year and a half, looked in the mirror. I remember, I'll never forget, I went to a wedding, a destination wedding in the Bahamas for family. And everyone stayed the Monday after to hang out on the beach. And I'm up in my room on the phone listing and selling businesses. And what I realized was I, again, was the business. It wasn't really a business. It was a job.
Yep. Big difference,
So
right?
big difference. I'd rather, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's a big difference. Most people don't. That's a very, I mean, at the time, that's a pretty mature thing to think of, right? Most 25-year-old kids today are going, where are we going this weekend? And I'm living for Friday night kind of stuff. So that's a very mature perspective to have of saying, I've got a job and I don't necessarily have a business. Because there's a big designator, right? So when people are listening to this, you've heard me rant and rave. If you're not acquiring clients systemically, if you're not getting referrals systemically, if you have to be on the job every single time in order to do that, you just bought yourself a job. And I have a friend of mine, he's in the food space in the franchise business, and they acquire guys that have jobs because the guys are like, they do it for 10 years and they get tired of it and they're saying, I want to get out. And then they get rid of them and they put in systems and methods and they go put together their 25 unit packages and they sell them to the big boys, right? So there's all kinds of strategies on how to do that, but that's a very different. All right. So what'd you do about it? Sorry. So now you go, okay, I got a job. Working from the Bahamas doesn't suck because if you have to work somewhere else, there's worse places to be doing that. Just saying. So what happened next? That's kind of fun. So what happened? So you said, okay, screw it. I'm going to fire my boss again. But you were the boss, right? So that doesn't necessarily work.
Well, I was a terrible boss. I always say, like, I work for a hard boss. He doesn't really, he's kind of crazy. Well, and just for clarity, I was definitely still thinking about how to pay my bar tab and going out. I just Monday through Friday was serious. So what happened? So, I guess you make a good point. Like, it's interesting. Like, being driven is a blessing and a curse because I always find I'm pretty optimistic, but I'll find like what I want to improve. And so, to your point, yes, you're right. I didn't have a boss. I was working from the Bahamas. I was, able to do that. But at the same time, I just felt like if I wanted to do something big, it had to be not just me. And you watch like all these companies that have grown, it's always like, usually there's like a team of people. And so what I did about it was I realized that franchise, they were a great franchise, but they didn't do anything to help me with lead generation.
Really? Franchises don't take the lead generation? Watch me fall over. Oh, wait.
Right. Right. This particular one definitely didn't.
None of them do. Unless I'm sure that's part of the story, but go ahead.
Yeah. So they didn't do anything really to help with the leads. And I realized that both businesses, what I was really pretty good at looking back was finding customers. And I'm quite frankly, Bryan, at that age, 25, at the time, no, I was not, excuse me, I was 20 or 23. I was an uphill battle being a consultant or a broker because people would say, like, you're my son's age. And not that it wasn't something I could succeed at, but it was always I was swimming upstream versus like downstream. And I realized that lead gen and utilizing technology that was a strong suit for me. So in 2016, I ended up leaving and starting my own lead generation company in the franchise space, generating leads. And then just to shorten this story, I did that for 7 years, built it to several millions in revenue and EBITDA. I was completely out of the business day to day. And then I sold that business to private equity 2 years ago before starting Voda.
That's very cool. And most people don't even, and obviously the tech space and exit's the way to go. And so our audience, they don't necessarily think about that, but good for you on doing that because most people don't get a chance to exit. I had a small exit 20 years ago and I go back going, should I have kept it or not? I kind of question that, but whoop, we lost. Did we lose you?
Oh, I'm still here. Sorry, my camera.
Oh, that's all right.
Cut out.
Okay, you're good. We'll edit that out. But so for me, that was a big shift in it. So good for you to having that opportunity to do that. So fast forward, so you got so lead gen. So were you so were you doing lead gen for across the board for multiple franchisees, or were you specializing in a certain, because obviously that's, lead gens means different things to lots of different people, right? So
Yeah, we were doing all kinds of lead generation for franchises, finding like customers. We had business. A lot of the business was finding franchisees, owners of franchises.
sure.
And I really just for 7 years became a lead generation, expert. And now in retrospect, when we acquired Voda, which story behind Voda is we're a franchise company across the country, and I acquired the business in February of 2023. We started franchising in April of last year. And really what we do is we focus on helping make the phone ring for franchise owners. And in my opinion, not to make business sound overly simplistic, but I do think people overcomplicate business. All you got to do is like make the phone ring, sell the job, give a good service, repeat. And so to me, our business owners focus on the selling the jobs and the leads, hire great people to service them, and then like don't get caught up in anything else. Just keep doing that.
Yep, I hear you, because I know that. So that's one of the things we do is when the phone rings, about 92% of them don't actually answer the whatever that inbound inquiry is. Ask me how I know. 92% of the average home services businesses do not answer the phone. How do I know that? Because in December and January this year, I called 5,000 service businesses across 4 different niches, and I used their Google My Business phone number, and they didn't even answer the phone.
Wow.
Out of that, almost 20% had no ability to leave a voicemail, or the phone was disconnected. So imagine, and they could have been out of business, right? But imagine you go through the time and effort to have your phone listed on Google My Business, which is, water restoration near me, carpet cleaning near me, home service, whatever it is near me. And they showed up on the list and they didn't even bother to answer the phone. So you make the phone ring. So my call to, and this is people listening will say that, answer the damn phone. So if you're making the phone ring and you're the Voda operator, or you want to be, answer it. You're gonna have your amount of closing will be probably double your competitors just because you answer the phone.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind, just to throw a question to you. So
Sure.
our franchise system, we utilize a call center that answers the phone
Yep.
24/7.
Yep. Because
To
that's
answer
because
the phone.
they're the water damage business, right? So if there's a water leak, absolutely. So they're better than most, right?
What would you take though? Would you rather be the owner or salesperson answering sometimes, but being better on the phone, or an answering service answering all the time, but not being as educated as the owner?
So I will tell you, we do this all day, every day. I will tell you, it's better to be present than it is to be perfect. So, because if you are qualifying the calls, is this an emergency? Can I help? There's a difference between, my sink is leaking and my neighbor's roof just collapsed into my bedroom, right? So there's different levels of, we live in Florida, so the condo thing is a thing, right? So there's different levels of kind of that knowledge base, so that you can amplify and multiply, because then call centers can be an incredibly cost-effective way to make sure that their inquiries are closed. But then what about the rest of the inquiries? Now it's, is it whatever the rest of the channel is, and what they are, but think about it, so that you're someone who's in your world, because you're making the phone ring and you help them kind of get that first gate, you're already better than 78% of your competitors, because they're not doing that. Now, I would imagine in the water restoration business, it's probably common to have that, because you have to answer the phone, right? Because if it is an emergency, you are doing that. But
I would love to record what you did record this. I want to share this recording with my franchise base. Only reason I ask is,
absolutely, absolutely.
we found that answering the phone is so important. And I agree with you 1000%. Obviously, a call center agent isn't going to be, Jordan Belfort on the phone, closing deals.
Sure.
But I think to answer the phone 100% of the time versus to answer less but perfectly, I'll go with the answering the phone every time.
Yeah, and then depending on where your center is, right? Because your center is probably in Latin America, mine's in the Philippines, might be a hybrid US, whatever it is, right? They have to be honest and say, I don't know the answer, but I can get it in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and then follow up, because that's the reality of the situation. Or you probably need to talk to Dan. And I know I see Dan's schedule and he's on a podcast right now. Can I have him call you back at 45 minutes? Right. So having whoever's taken that first touch from your client base, well, this is important for everybody. Whoever's taken that first touch, I don't care if it's me, I don't care if it's anybody, whoever's taken that first touch, empower them with the answer that says, great question, let me get back to you. Because all you're trying to do is, how can I help you? It doesn't mean you have to have an expert, right? People say, why are Bryan so nuts about this? I personally sold hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of every tech known to the planet. Everything from devices to enterprise ERP to, HR systems. I wouldn't even know what the login screen looked like, right? Because that's not my job. That's why they make experts. And so as a business owner, right, you don't need to be the expert, because that's why you hire experts. You're the face of the brand. You're out that's what my wife likes to say, kissing babies and shaking hands, right? Because if you're the, in essence, the face of the business. Franchises make it different, but the ability to scale without being it, right? And without being the brand of Bryan or the brand of Dan, you kind of do this, but you have to have people that are doing stuff behind the scenes. So, but absolutely share that. I will tell you that now we have some focuses and some other niches, and I will share that probably more transactional. Like, so this stuff you're doing is kind of this. People are calling 10 times, right? They're not calling 10 places. They're going to call 2 or 3, or they're getting referred in by. Is it like water restoration from like a damage of a house, like a water heater leaks or a fire or something like that, or is it?
Yeah, what Voda does is water damage when a home or business has water damage, a fire, mold. But just for clarity, we do floor cleaning as well. So carpet, tile and
Okay,
grout.
so there's 2 parts of it, right? So that's actually smart, because then all of a sudden you have you're going to go back to a client 3 and 5 and 7 times over a 3-year period, or you're going to come once, right? So the ones that, and my business focuses on the one they're coming more than one time, because it's just easier for people to grasp, especially going from small to big and big to large. I can share with you some of our clients, returning clients. If you're closing 100% of the time, that's not unusual. If you're a new client and you're driving some type of inbound inquiry, the average Joe, we work with I have a lot of friends that run marketing agencies, right? And if you're not answering the first call, that's their number one frustration, is they're generating traffic and they're not answering the inquiry. Oh, these leads are garbage. Well, maybe they're not buying the first time. Maybe they're going to call 3 places. Maybe they're going to see who. Maybe they don't know the answer yet. Maybe they do need to talk to somebody else, right? So there's a million reasons. But if you don't answer their inbound inquiry, you're great. You're nuts, right? You're just shooting yourself in the foot. As we try to, I tell my team, right, we get to help clients. It's Monday. We get to help people, right? So that's what, it becomes this culture thing. So anyway, but that's really cool that you do that, because I think one of the frustrations I hear all the time, so especially if you're a new business owner or franchisee, right, you might have been a middle manager at Bell Labs, or you might have been a whatever at some company. And, you said, I'm firing my boss. I'm done. I'm 50 years old. I want to do this for 15 years and I want to sell it and move to the Bahamas. But they're not lead gen experts, right? So now all of a sudden these franchises sell you the lead. They sell you and say, oh, good luck. Go get them. Go get some leads. You're good. Put some coupons in Valpak and the phone will ring. And then you realize the only people calling are guys like me that are trying to sell them something, which is why they're answering the phone. But you don't know if it was me or one of my assistants calling because I'm getting prices for my vacation home, right? So it's amazing that that's just the one thing people can do, right? So that's my rant of the day is, if you're generating an opportunity, it's an opportunity, right? So you get to help people.
Yeah, I mean, to me, answering the phone is half the battle. What we do at Voda is, as I mentioned, lead gen is a big focus of our franchise offering. And so we have what we call the flood it program, like floor it, like you floor the pedal to the metal. If you want to go fast, you got to floor it. If you want to go fast in restoration, you got to flood yourself with leads. And so we call our program Flood It. And we have first of all, there's only 4 ways to generate leads in any business. I'm going to break it down real quick because this is my background, lead gen. You've got one-to-one warm, which is like I call up a referral, my friend at B&I. That's how a lot of people start out. When I started my business, and I would go to B&I and I would talk to one-to-one warm. Then you've got one-to-many, like one-to-many cold, which would be like one to many cold would be like paid audience, paid Google ads, right? Facebook ads, pay-per-click, SEO, direct mail. You've got, you've got one to, you know, you have one to many where they're warm, which would be like free content, right? You're providing free content like this podcast, and then people are coming to you warm after hearing that. And there's always so many levers. So you can make outbound calls, you can send direct mail, you can send LinkedIn messages, emails, Facebook messages, Facebook ads, Google ads, Instagram ads, Thumbtack, Angie, local service, which is Google guaranteed, and SEO, organic pay-per-click. Other than that, you can go out and you can network and you can build referrals. Like there's only so many levers to pull. And the best business owners focus on pulling those levers a lot of times. So for example, in our business, Bryan, we do this program where we literally have people going to Googling, my ceiling tile just leaked. What the heck do I do? Because they don't Google water restoration near me, by the way.
They're trying to answer a question. They're not.
Correct. There's 35,000 water damage keywords like that. But when they call in, you're right, if you don't answer right then and there, and you're not in the house 45 minutes later, they're going to go on with whoever else. They don't care about your super duper honcho water sucker. They care about, can you come and help me?
Exactly. Well, and obviously every business model is a little different, but in your business, it's critical, right? So you got to get them to, and it's just traffic, right? The proper term I like to use is just something's happened. You're getting an inquiry from whatever media is available, right? And then you got to do something about it.
Right.
What was the fourth one? I got one-to-one, one to cold many, one to many warm.
I always mix this up, so I have it in my notes because I was
like, wait a second, because I was taking notes.
Are you ready?
Yep.
It's one-to-one warm audience. You've got one to many to a warm audience would be like posting content. So one-to-one to a warm audience is like warm outreach, calling your buddy. Hey, can I picture?
Yep. Your
number two would
network.
be one to many to a warm audience, which would be you post free content to many people, but they're warm because they're in your network.
Yep.
One-to-one cold audience would be like cold outreach, like cold calls. And then one to many cold audience would be paid ads on Facebook, Google, My Business, etc. But what's interesting is most of my franchise owners, they want to get customers quickly through the internet, which we have the ways to do. But what you have to do is you have to be able to spend money, right? You have to understand CAC, which is customer acquisition cost. Like if I told you a lead costs $2, $22, or $2,200, does it matter if you closed one out of one with $2,200 leads and your job's 30 grand, or you close one out of 300, $22 leads? I'll take the one lead every day, even if it's expensive.
Right. And I think people don't, I think grossly, like, so previous Bryan life was marketing consultant and sales consultant extraordinaire. And be like, well, what is your customer acquisition cost, right? What does it cost? Oh, well, it's different. Well, what's your average deal size? Well, it's different. Well, so first you have to understand what your average sale is. That's how you go backwards. And then how much would you spend to acquire that client? Right. I agree with you. I would much rather spend $2,500 to get a $30,000 job than to spend, $220 to get an $800 job. Right. But the reality of it is you need a mix, right? Because you don't know because the $800 job could turn into a $30,000 job if you do a good job.
Well, that's like for example, in some of these programs, we'll spend as much as $600 or even $1,600 for a phone call. And you'll go to a job and it turns out it's a puddle and the job's going to make maybe $300 in revenue. You just spend $1,600 on the job and you're like, holy, crap, I just lost money. But then the next job is 30 grand and you got to say, all right, well, I spent $5,000 total. And in the aggregate, I made 30,000. My gross profit was, I'm making numbers up, whatever. I got to be careful, by the way, because in my business, I can't make what's called an earnings claim in franchising.
I hear it. So anyway, this is why Dan and I are just shooting the breeze over a cup of coffee. So that's why we're just talking about, right? But
full disclosure,
understanding, it's and that's why you got to test it, right? So even if you're not, hey, listen, you're not in a franchise, you don't have Dan and his super secret sauce to help you get through this, and you're Joe Blow, and you're going to need to spend money on traffic. And you need to understand how much traffic generates how many inquiries. It turns into how many jobs. And then you can't look at one. You have to understand, like, you got to look at a universe. Like there's a reason why these marketing consultants say, what'd you spend in the last year on advertising? Because they can't. If we could do it, if marketing people could do it with just one magic bullet, we wouldn't be marketing consultants. We would just be in your business. Right. So it's like I tell people that all the time. I used to tell them when I was consulting, I said, well, I'm not in your business, but if I was, you probably wouldn't like me because I would kick your ass. Right. Because I do all the stuff that you don't want to do because you're afraid about micromanaging the numbers. Right. But there's also a trust factor. Right. So by being inside of your world, right. So you guys understand the entire ecosystem. Right. So you have the benefit of looking at all the franchises and all the locations, all the traffic, where Joe Blow, right, who's the marketing guy, who might be the marketing whiz at the BNI, but he might have some challenges, right? And so if you're looking to make this jump into, I'm gonna fire my damn boss. I'm gonna have a chat with my boss about this today, but I don't know if he's gonna like it. So
Interesting. Most people micromanage people, but you said micromanage the numbers. They don't micromanage the numbers. I'd rather see people, the opposite of micromanage people. I can macromanage people and micromanage the numbers. So like, give you an example. You talked about a lot of your listeners and the revenue size that they're at. Well, I'll tell you right now, to get from 2 to 5 and 5 to 10, these are $1 million in revenue. They're completely different, like mindset shifts. And the best way I can explain 2 million plus is up until 2 million, you can hold on as tight. You can try to hold on a little bit. After 2 million, it depends on the business, of course, but typically you can't hold on. Like you actually just, no matter what, the car's moving too fast to hold on to the car handle. And so you're going to have to be able to like let go. Like I was thinking about that this morning. It's 11:37 right now, Monday morning. There's so much stuff going on. I've been on Zoom calls all morning doing things that are valuable things. But like if I was involved in everything in my business, there's no way. It's just physically impossible. You have to let go.
yeah, that's crazy. So it's funny because my business, I have my consulting business, we have a call center business, and we own a home service business, and that business is 7 figures. And I can tell you right now, there's no possible way that we can keep up. Like, so it's impossible. And so I have spent a little over a year building myself what Dan's already done. I've got 126 standard operating procedures that we implement every day, week, month, quarter for us, our team, and our clients. And now we're going back and okay, we're reevaluating. Is this the right thing to do? Are we reacting fast enough? Sometimes I think we spend too much time. Right. I'm a typical, there's an episode you'll hear it. It's coming out. We're entrepreneurs, we're firefighters, and we're also arsonists. Right. We're addicted to chaos. Right. So you think about, so as the typical entrepreneur, like, oh, I can't, because they'll go, oh, I can't do this because I need more staff. I can't get more leads. Or like, what if hey, dude, what if you don't do anything and you're stuck in this island of paralysis for the next 5 years? Right. So you definitely have to let go. So lots of resources, right? I think probably the place, at least for me, was a life changer was the book The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. That was literally a life changer for me. I was consulting, sitting in an airport, flying all over the country, working with amazing clients, selling big stuff. And I sat at Bradley International Airport in Connecticut, like in a puddle in the corner going, what am I doing this stuff for? I was like, I was like, what the hell am I doing? I have a job. I have a bigger purpose I need to serve. So, within a year later, I was at a Tony Robbins event, walking on fire, jumping around with all that other stuff. I wrote my first book. Like, I'm like, what? So literally like just the world changes once you say, screw it. But everyone struggles, right? We're all just humans. And then it really is a mindset thing. You have to think about, it's not, well, wouldn't it be great to get to $1 million? Well, in today's marketing world, there's a lot of these guys that, so I have a 7-figure funnel and all this other stuff. And then they didn't make any money. So the reality of it is that you need to know your numbers because you need to make a profit so that you can spend money to acquire the next client so that you can hire the staff to do the work. Otherwise, you're just creating more chaos for yourself. Right. So yeah, just nuts. So anyway, it's interesting you said the word mindset. Talk about that for a second, because as someone who's going from, hey, what is this a good idea or not? How do you guys, how do you talk about mindset? That's a big one. That's a big grown-up conversation right there.
Well, I know it sounds a little like I'll preface by I'm someone that prides themselves on work your tail off. I'm a very hardworking person. I think I'm successful because of my work ethic or the little success I've had so far. With that said, I do believe that work ethic will only get you so far
Right.
if your mindset is like if you're just in this mindset of which I don't want to get too like emotional about it or deep, but like usually when someone's stuck in their business and they're doing $2 million in revenue and they know they can do more and they can't, it's almost like I don't deserve or like you're deep down telling yourself that you can't have more when the reality is that business and every other business exists without you. Like be the least important person in your business. And so like I think for me, I had that mindset. I was the whole business in my previous company. I started in at 23. I sold it when I was 29. I missed every family barbecue you could think of. Relationships ended. Like I was obsessed with that business. My self-worth was that business. Okay. When it sold, and on Monday morning, I called the employees and they said, "Oh, well, congrats to you, but what about me? Like, is my job still here?" And my answer was, "Yeah, no, you're fine." I realized that they really didn't care. I mean, they don't get me wrong. I had great employees that loved to work together, but they were like, "Is my job still good?" "Yes." "Okay, well, I'll be all right." Like the reality
Okay.
is you're not that important. Like if you kind of like lower your ego a little bit and you say to yourself, like, there's other people that can do a really great job if I hire them, and you take yourself out of the day to day, you're exactly right, though. Then you have to not start causing problems. I've been there where things are running smooth and I go fire, let someone go because, it's like I needed chaos. That sounds really bad. I didn't let them go because I needed chaos, but I thought, they were doing something not to my standard. And it was like looking back, I could have just calmly solved that with them, but I wanted to cause some chaos because I wanted something back on my plate. That was the reality. And I think if you really want to get to that next level, you have to be willing to live maybe with a little less chaos.
It's crazy. So, and of course, it wouldn't be a podcast with Bryan without me talking about books. We already talked about the E-Myth Revisited, which I don't think we've talked about. Another great book. So we talk about pre-programming and stuff like that. There's a book I read probably about 3 years ago called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and it talks about the mindset of success. He's a psychologist. It talks about lots of different things, and he talks about, among other things, people that are predetermined. They pre-wire themselves to fail unconsciously because of those around them are wiring themselves to not be cheering for you. So there may have been someone in your family who was cheering against you as well as cheering for you, right? So all of a sudden you got to do that. And then here's a crazy concept, because this was my problem. What if I went all in and I was committed to it and I worked the crazy hours and I did all this stuff and it didn't work? Then what? So what happens is humans, we self-sabotage ourselves. So we never get to that point where we get to 1 million or we get to 500,000, we get to 1 million, get to 3 million. So crazy, because it's literally, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, wait, I decided to wait till next quarter to do that. Or I decided to wait to hire an account manager, or I decided to wait to join a mastermind, or I can just do it all myself. I don't need a coach, or I don't need to buy into a friend. I can just do it all myself. And amazingly enough, and among other things, right? So you get, there's this, Gay Hendricks talks about this. I don't know the term he uses, but it's like we as entrepreneurs, and he gets in other stuff too, have this court around us, right? There's all these people that are judging us. It's our wife, it's our kids, it's our neighbors, our family, our peers, right? So all of a sudden things are happening, and then we subconsciously, you think about these really high performers. Let's, Elon Musk, zero F's giving. He doesn't care about anybody but what he's trying to do. He's on a mission and he doesn't care. So we a lot of times, don't have that mindset. Now, obviously, people in your life, your kids, your family, your mom, your dad, your whatever, you want to try to accommodate them. But this crazy concept of like, well, the must be nice police, right? Oh, it must be nice to go to the Bahamas and make phone calls. It must be nice to have a new Range Rover. It must be nice to have a vacation home. Hey, guess what? I worked my butt off. Like, that's my tail. Like, so the must be nice police need to go hit the road, right? So as an entrepreneur, right, that's a big pill to swallow, right? And if you think of the atypical home service business guy or girl, right, they're an artist, right? They may be good at a craft. They might be, right, so they may be the best home builder in the world. They might love landscaping. They might love whatever. But the reality of it is Gerber talks about we're managers, entrepreneurs, and artists, right? Or whatever the flavor of it is. But the reality of it is you got to wrap around this whole crazy concept that I got to be willing to be unreasonable with myself and then take crazy leaps, like just go absolutely berserk
I mean,
on doing that. So it's fun. It's just there's the book of there. I always try to find some crazy book to put on these things because
I'll have to read that. Yeah.
it's
I
a
mean,
really interesting, concept. It stirred some things in me personally that, I kind of went, wow. I had some big aha moments, right? So but it is what it is, and now I know why I've been convicted of crimes I never know I committed, kind of stuff, and those are exact words from the book. But it's a fantastic listen or read, however you consume it, right? So if you got a 45-minute work to drive to work, turn off Howard Stern or CNBC or the Stock Report or Fox Business, whatever you listen to, get some podcasts, listen to some cool stuff. Hopefully you're listening to this while you're going somewhere, but audiobooks too are fantastic resources, right?
I would say like if you drive and you turn in audio, like I would drive after this to go to a lunch with a franchise owner, and I'll listen. It's 45 minutes to an hour away. I'm going to listen to an audiobook that I'm listening to. Audiobooks are great. I hate to say this, but like is always tough because especially extended family, because you all came from the same place typically, and so they're the closest to you. And when they see you succeed, sometimes unfortunately, subconsciously, they know where you came from. Everyone else just gets the version of you from today. Like anyone I meet right now only knows me of today. And they could tell themselves that I came from, family money, or it must have been this or must have been that. Your family knows exactly where you came from and how hard it probably was to do what you're doing. So subconsciously, not because they don't love you, but subconsciously, sometimes they will bring that down a bit because they didn't do what you're doing. That's a tough thing about growing. With extended family, I think hopefully immediate family, like your kids, your spouse, like hopefully you guys can really get on the same page. But
if your spouse isn't on board, it's going to prove to be a challenge, right? So that's a big that's a big leap. That's a big leap, hence the name of the Big Leap book, right? So
yeah,
that's why you see more and more of these entrepreneur guys, like Tony Robbins is out with his wife, right? It's not an accident that him and his wife are on stage, because now Tony's Tony, he's another planet, right? But it's hard if you don't have a support mechanism to realize, hey, because realize they're going to be 14-hour days. There's going to be 7-day weeks. There's, especially in that business, right? If there's massive damages and you got to get stuff out, you better figure out how to deal with that stuff. So yeah, crazy stuff. So anyway, I think we're at a great breaking point, because I think Dan's got a fantastic lunch. Hopefully he's getting some really good Jersey food. Or you're in New York.
I'm
So
in New Jersey. I'm heading
you're in
down
New
to
York.
the
You're in New
Jersey
York. You got
Shore.
oh, you're headed down the shore?
Yep, for a lunch with someone who just bought a Voda from us in New Jersey, and some other people.
Fantastic. Just remember, the original Jersey Mike's is in Manasquan or Point Pleasant. I think it's Point. I used to go there never knowing it was the original Jersey Mike's.
Yeah.
So there's I do like their food as much as I need to trim down, but I do like to do that. But Dan, thank you for an amazing 30 or 40 minutes of your time. I will tell you that thinking about, really interesting that most franchises don't think about lead gen, right? How are you going to acquire new customers? That's one of my big takeaways. Kind of the 4 ways to think about lead generation, because there are only 4. There's a million, like you said. I like the term use levers, right? Because you just have to acquire a client. You just got to get good at it, and then there's a good chance if you're not necessarily good at it, you need to find people that help you flood the business, flood your inbox, flood your phones, whatever. So is there somewhere they could find more information on you, Dan?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, I'm just Dan Claps, CLAPS, Dan Claps. I'm very active there. My Instagram is Dan Franchise. I also post a lot of content on there, just Dan Franchise. And then, Voda is www.myvodafranchise.com.
That's amazing. I will make sure I put all those in the show notes. That's good for SEO, which is also good for lots of business stuff. So, Dan, thanks very much for your time this morning, and go enjoy your lunch.
Thanks again for having me, Bryan. I'm going to